you might be considering how you will feed your baby. It's now well known that breastfeeding offers a wide range of advantages over bottle feeding, including protection from infections. But you may have reasons for deciding to bottle feed. At any rate, bringing the subject up beforehand may help you make the decision that is right for you. It may also help you avoid some of the problems that some mothers face in the early days of feeding. For example, if a baby has her first successful breastfeed within an hour of birth, there is a higher chance of establishing breastfeeding easily.
Has anybody heard anything about the health benefits?
All the antibodies obviously are included in breast milk.
There's some super milk at the beginning apparently, which is important.
Right, yes, the first few days you have a different kind of milk called colostrum, and you don't produce very much of it. It's produced in very small quantities because babies have very tiny tummies. I mean, newborn babies' tummies are about the size of walnuts, half a cocktail sausage size, you know. So you have this very, very special milk, which is proportionally high in antibodies.
During a course of NCT classes, a breastfeeding counsellor will explain the advantages of breastfeeding. Breast milk is a nourishing, thirst-quenching liquid which provides protection against gastroenteritis. A breastfed baby gets all the antibodies his mother has built up over the years, as well as any she makes while she's feeding. So if she gets an infection, her body immediately starts making antibodies, which are then passed straight to baby. In every feed of breast milk, all the nutrients are there in exactly the right balance. The kind of protein, the kind of fats, vitamins, minerals are all geared for the baby to digest and absorb easily. It also contains antibodies to defend him against disease. It's convenient, it's quick, it's always at the right temperature, the ultimate inconvenience food in fact. There is also evidence that breastfeeding protects against allergies like eczema and asthma, and it may even help prevent cot death.
Breastfeeding is a convenient way of feeding. There are no fiddly preparations, there's always some available and at the right temperature. Some people say they want a bottle feed because it's more convenient, but they may think again when they find themselves walking through a cold house in the middle of the night and messing around with bottles and teats while the baby screams the house down.
Even if you decide to bottle feed, it's worth bearing in mind that it is still a good idea to breastfeed your baby for a few days. During late pregnancy and the first few days after birth, the mother's breasts produce a high-protein, creamy fluid full of antibodies. This fluid, called colostrum, helps protect babies against the germs that can cause diarrhea and vomiting. If you have chosen not to breastfeed for whatever reason, you can still have the same amount of closeness in a feed if you're using bottles. Keeping the baby close to you, talking and smiling can be just as satisfying for you and baby.
You may or may not get the chance to meet beforehand the midwife who will be delivering you. But either way, it's still worthwhile writing a birth or care plan. A birth plan is simply a list of preferences, a guide for your midwife and whoever else cares for you in labour. It should not be seen as a rigid plan, more an indication of what you'd like to happen.
The birth plan is a good idea though, because it does concentrate your mind. It's like any academic exercise. You sit down, you discuss it between the two of you, you write down your options, but you have to remain flexible.
You can contact the NCT for details.
Your plan can be a useful starting point on the day, and you won't have to remember all the details at a time when you want to concentrate on your labour. It's important to discuss it with your midwife beforehand. Remember, you're not under any obligation to accept any medical procedure if you don't feel it's right for you and your baby. But it's important that you make such decisions based on all the information that you can get.
Having a birth plan was very good for me because I think the midwives were very good because they respected my wishes. And they let me stand up. They didn't say you must lie on the bed. They let me stand up, they let me walk round. They let me have him in the way that was just what I wanted to do.
You might want to say that you'd like to avoid an episiotomy You might hope to manage without drugs. You may have decided to have an epidural. You may wish to think about the environment in which you'd like to greet your baby, the noise levels and the lighting, for instance. Even if you're having an assisted delivery, you can still say things like, I'd like the first voice the baby hears to be mine. I'd like my partner to cut the cord. I'd like to cuddle my baby straight away, so please place it on my tummy.
If you want to be included in any discussions that may become necessary throughout the birth, such as speeding labour up, inducing labour or various other kinds of assistance that may be offered, say so beforehand. And as with all procedures, discussion with your midwife or the medical staff at your hospital can help you understand what is performed in your unit and why, as well as helping you to think through your own options. Ideally, you will have had the chance to get to know your midwife during pregnancy. If you have met and talked, she will understand what is important for you, and you may feel more confident and at ease. Having said that, many women who have never seen their midwife before build up a rapport with her very quickly. A good midwife will listen and respond to your needs, and your birth plan will guide her.
We'll get there, I think.
Your labour companion, if you have one, will help, not least by being a familiar face. If you're having your baby in hospital, it can be helpful to look at the birth rooms. You can look and see whether you're able to push the birth bed to one side completely as you walk in, and then refurnish the room in your mind's eye. What do you need? Perhaps try seeing the bed as a prop, and imagining it as your bed at home rather than the place where you have to give birth to a baby. Labour is the process during which your baby is born. There are 3 stages, each of which has a very specific function. During the first stage, the cervix opens. During the second stage, the uterus pushes the baby out. And during the third stage, the placenta is delivered and the uterus starts returning to normal. It's called labour because it's hard work and emotionally demanding, but all your preparation should help give you confidence. As your hormones prepare you for labour, you may experience some of the following signs. You may become more aware of mild contractions. You may feel both physically tired and emotionally more than ready for your pregnancy to be at an end. You may experience a surge of energy a day or 2 before going into labour, and you may have a strong nesting feeling with a need to put things in order prior to the birth. Weight loss and mild diarrhoea are also common. You may feel impatient for labour to start, or you may feel a sense of calm acceptance or even resignation as you approach the birth.
I personally became very serene, and I remember waking Tim up when we were at his parents' to say, I think my waters have gone. Now normally, I'm quite a level-headed, calm person anyway, but you don't panic. You know what's happening. Your body tells you this really is happening, and you just go with it.
Yeah, so it took me about 3 hours of the start of labour to actually acknowledge that I was in labour. And they tell you all these things about, you should have a bath, and I was doing all my antenatal exercises, you see. I was on all fours and wriggling my bottom and all these things that you're supposed to do. And I was doing all this without sort of thinking I was really in labour, because I just wouldn't accept, that this baby could possibly come 2 weeks early.
Sometimes it might be suggested that your baby's birth be induced. That means started with drugs or by artificially breaking the waters. Induction should only be done for the mother or baby's sake and not for convenience. Although this may not be how you imagined it at all, you may agree that it's necessary. The important thing is to make sure you have enough information to make an informed decision. Being induced does not mean that you have to have an assisted delivery, although it does increase the chances. Shortly before induction is to take place, you're given a vaginal examination to assess the state of your cervix. Often the first step is to insert a pessary with a hormone which will trigger the start of labour. Your membranes may be ruptured if the pessaries aren't having enough effect, or if the cervix is ripe enough without them. If neither of these gets things going, you may be put on a drip of Syntocinon. Your baby will usually be monitored continuously using an electrode on his scalp, but you can often keep mobile even if your baby is being monitored and may well be able to do much of what you'd already planned. The drip will not be stopped until after the delivery of the placenta. Depending on how your body responds, not all 3 steps for induction may be necessary.